Hey everybody, Happy New Year. I don't know about anybody else, but I got a year older in 2023 and a few other things. But I hope you had a good 2023 and I hope you have a fantastic 2024. We could sure use it, couldn't we? Whatever your walk of life or point of view, I'm sure we all agree on one thing, and that we could use a good 2024. I am going to play the part of Nostradamus and make 10 predictions for music and the music community in 2024. I hope I won't regret this, but I have 10 things that I predict are going to happen in music in 2024. Number one is, I think for the first time we might see Keith Richards start to look a little slower, a little older. I was watching some of the recent footage, and it was so great, and it's so amazing to see them. Mick Jagger's unbelievable. But Keith was putting on his guitar, and I said, he's tired. He looks like he's tired, and I don't know. You just wonder at some point they're not going to be playing much anymore, at least not the big tours and shows. And I was watching Keith in particular, and I thought, man, I don't know. I guess once he weren't, I'm not saying he didn't play bad, but I just watched him put on that guitar, and he looked like he was pretty much close to the end of his rock and roll touring days. I don't know. It's going to be a sad day because what a legacy. And he's already gone on way longer than anybody thought, as did the band. But that's one prediction. Number two, my prediction is that Chinese guitars will continue their ascendancy, maybe even becoming the way we kind of view Japanese guitars. I've played several Chinese guitars, and they're all excellent, and they're very affordable, kind of like Japanese guitars. Now, in the 90s, I remember that's what people said about Japanese guitars, and now Japanese guitars there's quite a cachet to Japanese guitars. Fender Japan, of course, but even just Ibanez, some of the Japanese workmanship is really good, and I feel that we're going to kind of see that trajectory with Chinese guitars. One thing that I think will make a difference right now, a lot of the Chinese guitars, at least that I've played, have been American companies like Guild or something that make their guitars in China. And you might start seeing more designated Chinese guitars because let me tell you something, they make some really good guitars, as do the Japanese, and other countries too, But I personally think you're going to start to see people really like Chinese guitars and not just see them kind of how they do now as an affordable alternative to an American guitar. And that would be a good thing. The Chinese make some great stuff. Number three, I predict that streaming will decline. You can watch YouTube. There are a lot of videos about how Spotify is changing their payout. I get money from Spotify, a little bit every month or two. Nothing to retire me or anything. But so I kind of follow some of these articles about Spotify. But one thing about streaming is a lot of these places there, and I think this is also true for movies. They have these catalogs of intellectual property they've bought. And I read an article about Netflix. They have thousands and thousands of movies that weren't watched a single time in 2023. And I'm sure they paid for the rights to all those. So I predict there'll be less streaming. I don't know what they're going to come up with because streaming was supposed to be an alternative to downloading and piracy like Napster. And of course, in my opinion, nothing's ever been as vital and as vibrant for the music community as record stores that sold physical copies. So I don't know if I would predict a return of physical media. Some people are, physical media. There's a lot of good things about physical media, having your own copy of stuff. That's one reason I keep a lot of my vinyl. But I don't think the streaming platform, all the way up from the littlest artist up to the big companies and big artists, I don't think it's worked out the way they had hoped. And I don't know, I've just been reading a lot of articles. They're trying to come up with other ways. I don't think they have a good alternative to it at the moment, but I'm pretty sure they're going to be changing streaming. It's hard to imagine it would go away just because of the technology end of it, so convenient and everything. But in terms of the way they license music for streaming and things, I think we're going to see some big changes in 2024. On a related note, number 4, I hope I'm wrong about this. I think we might start to see less music available on streaming instead of more. We've seen that with movies. About 10 or 15 years ago, when Netflix had those red envelopes, I used to think I could get practically any movie I wanted in 2 days with those red envelopes. I mean, the worst drive-in movies ever. I used to watch Mexican horror films. I was working on my Spanish, or German and French movies. You could find anything on Netflix. And boy, a lot of that's dried up. And I think that's because of the way they change intellectual property laws. Netflix can't afford to have those huge libraries anymore. But what a lot of the movies they do have, no one ever watches. So I think a lot of companies in media are trying to reduce the amount of catalog they have, so that what they're trying to promote is competitive with stuff. You might make a big new movie, and everybody sits around on Friday night and says, "Hey, let's watch The Godfather." It's what came out in 1972. It's hard to compete with a lot of those old classics. And I think Hollywood's really kind of gotten stingy with some of those old movies. Not so much the big heavy hitters, but just a lot of the movies that were made in the 60s and 70s, they're harder to find than they used to be. I sure hope I'm wrong, but I'd hate to see that happen to music, Maybe one day you want to hear Jerry and the Pacemakers and it'll be gone. That would be terrible. But that's kind of what's happening in movies, and I hope we don't have something like that in music, because although the streaming format is certainly not a good one financially in a lot of ways. I'll let some of you business people explain that better than I can. One thing you can say about it, it was convenient. If you want to hear Jerry and the Pacemakers now, you got about 1 second to wait. You just hit Jerry and the Pacemakers, YouTube or whatever. And you could see all, everything. And I'm wondering if that'll be the case going forward, at least in some artists, especially when they're buying all these catalogs, Dylan and Bruce Springsteen. They might start to, have kind of more targeted releases. And to do that, they might have to limit all the huge amounts of old music that a lot of those artists have sitting around online. I hope I'm wrong. But I do think that's possible. Number 5 prediction: I think Guitar Center is going to start rebounding. I'm not necessarily speaking financially. I know they've been in bankruptcy a couple times and are always seem to be on the verge of it. But I just have noticed Guitar Center gets more comments, and I think I don't know. It's just a perception I have, because with Guitar Center you have a sales floor and a showroom, and that's all over the country. And you can't compete with that. And Sweetwater's been bought out by venture capitalists, and especially with the used market, and people like have their guitars worked on. I personally think Guitar Center, which has been kind of kicked around, literally, and just kind of everybody knocks on Guitar Center, but you might start to see it rebound as more of a preferred option for people buying guitars. I'm sure lots of people have always bought guitars at Guitar Center just because you want a guitar. It is Guitar Center, but something tells me that some of these other places are going to have trouble competing with Guitar Center because of its floor rooms, showrooms, and the techs it has on site. You can pick up the phone and call somebody, and there might be in your city. They've got all the online 800 stuff just as much as anyone else, but they also have places in your city. And I think they've had a lot of trouble, but over the long term, that's a big advantage that they have. I'm sure it's expensive and all that with tons of overhead that other places don't have. But I think in terms of the consumer market, I think you're going to see Guitar Center start to pick up more than it has. Number 6 is Eastman Guitars. I think Eastman Guitars are going to start getting hot. Eastman, I've known about Eastman because I played Eastman mandolins and just different instruments. I know they have Eastman violins. And they always make good instruments, and they were always affordable. So I've a lot in folk music. You'd see people with Eastman mandolins and things around, but they're starting to enter. Well, I don't think it's new, but I think some of their high-end guitars which are really competitive with Martin and Taylor. Some of the really good ones. You might start to see more interest in those Eastman guitars. For one thing, right now you can get a guitar that's a top-notch, solid wood, exquisitely made guitar from Eastman, and it's almost like half the price of a comparable Martin. But I don't even just think it's price. I think Eastman is going to start being a status company because the fact is they make great stuff. And by the way, so. Prediction number 7, fewer pedals. I don't know about you, but how many more delay pedals do we need? How many more reverb pedals do we need? And they always advertise them with all this hype, all this, you didn't even hear delay until you bought this pedal. But in the end, you've got like delay, gain, which I call fuzz, but overdrive, distortion, delay, overdrive, reverb, and modulation. Maybe some loopers, but I mean, how much more can you do? And there's been such a glut of pedals, and I've kind of got so I tune it out because I love the pedals I have. They were, I don't even use half of what they can do. So I've lost interest in, whatever new pedals are coming out. And that my prediction is I'm not the only one. In 2024, all these new pedals you see, I don't know, they might start to struggle some. And again, it's kind of like we were saying with, it's hard to compete with Electro Harmonics and Boss and, JHS and some of the big companies, but you're always seeing all these little boutique pedals. And at some point, of course, I'm old, so I've had gear a long time. I guess you can always try to shoot for the market of first-time buyers or younger people that maybe don't have as much history with these other companies. But even Boss, Electro Harmonics, I mean, how many more great delay pedals can Electro Harmonics come out with? They're always great. I mean, Electro Harmonics is great for delay and fuzz. All their pedals are always great. But how many more do you need, And at the end of the day, it's not like they're that different. They're only a couple effects if you really stop to think about it. How many thousands of guitar pedals? And it's basically delay, reverb, overdrive, and modulations, I mean, how many different versions of those 4 or 5 different things can you make? So I don't know. There's been a huge glut of pedals, and something tells me we're going to see diminishing of the emphasis on pedals. Number 8, I predict that YouTube copyright is going to get easier because I don't know about anyone else, but I'm tired. Every time I play 2 notes of a song, I get that copyright claim. I had a copyright strike. And it gets so you can't even play music. I think that's why so many YouTubers just sit and noodle around all the time, which I do too sometimes, but you can't play actual songs. Even if you teach a song, you might get a copyright claim or something, and who knows? And you never know. It's just all up to the artist. You might have an artist that died in 1980, and he's got a great-great-granddaughter that sues everybody that plays his song, because she wants the money or whatever. And I don't know, just something tells me that the YouTube copyright system has been so criticized. I'm hoping, and maybe even predicting, but it's certainly a hopeful prediction that they do something to fix it so it's not such a scary, ominous thing to play someone else's song. I mean, if you're a musician, how can you play music without playing other people's songs? It's kind of stupid to say, well, just write all your own songs, Well, can you imagine if they said that in classical music? Well, you can't play Beethoven, so just write your own sonata, I mean, if you can write a sonata like Beethoven, that's great, but part of the charm of classical music is hearing people play Beethoven and the great songs that have been written before. So I'm a big believer in playing songs, not just noodling around. And YouTube makes it tough. And that's the history and heritage of music. It's not just the theory of it and the gear of it, but the history and heritage of popular song. And I think YouTube hopefully will change some things about that, because it's a real pain right now. And something tells me they might be aware of that. I don't know. It's probably not an easy way to fix it. But one thing I think they should do is have an idea of implied consent. If your music's on YouTube, you are default consenting to let anybody play it for free or revenue sharing. If Don Henley wants to have Eagles songs on YouTube, that's fine, but it's implied consent. By the privilege of having his music on YouTube, he's automatically consenting to let other people play his music for free or revenue sharing. Otherwise, if he's that opposed to it, he should take his music off YouTube. That's a good solution, because you can't run around suing people, for playing Peaceful Easy Feeling the rest of your life. I mean, how horrible is that? So I'm hoping they fix that. Number 9, I predict a Taylor Swift return to country. I'm not a big Taylor Swift fan, and frankly, I don't know that much about her, but she's so huge now. But I live in a place where there's a lot of country music fans, and but I remember about 10 years ago or so, she was like the hot new country star. I mean, she was right in there with like Toby Keith, and I don't listen to that much of the newer Nashville corporate country, but she was right in there with anybody. I mean, just a really major country artist, played with banjos and everything. And then she kind of went pop. Maybe that was a good move financially or even musically. I don't listen to it, but something tells me she's getting a little older. She's in her 30s. She was raised in Nashville. She's gonna, you come back to your roots, especially when you get a little older. It might be a good career move, because I think people liked her in country. I think she does, country flavors and things now, maybe more than she did a few years ago. But I predict that maybe she'll start to do more overt country and start to be more of a country artist again, which I think would be a good move for her. Not that she cares what I think. My last prediction, and this is another prediction I hope, and I rolled 2 into 1 prediction. I hope in 2024, and I predict in 2024, we will see Don Felder play with the Eagles and Ace Frehley play with whatever is left of Kiss. I know they had their farewell tour, but I just think that would be so huge. Like, you see if Don Felder is ever going to play with Don Henley and Joe Walsh again, and Timothy B. Schmidt. Of course, Randy Meisner's dead. It's got to be now. We're running out of time. People have moaned and groaned and argued about Don Felder and Ace Frehley for a couple decades, if you think about it. And it was always kind of a fun debate, something to enjoy getting mad about. But I think we're at the end of the road, and if it's going to happen, it needs to happen now. And who knows? Can you imagine if Don Felder came out and played with the Eagles, even just for a show or two with Don Henley and Joe Walsh and Timothy B. Schmidt? How great that would be! I don't know. It's sad if they won't do it, because if they don't do it this year, I feel like they'll just all go to their graves and never do it. But I'm hoping that it will happen, and I predict it will, optimistically, because I think it would be a great show. No matter if you're putting together a concert tour or something, you've got to think, man, that would just be an automatic ticket sales. So those are my predictions. I hope I'm wrong about some of them, and I hope I'm right about a few. But those are my predictions for 2024. And I hope you have a healthy and happy 2024. Lord knows we need it. God bless you and you and yours for the coming year. And I hope you had a Merry Christmas and a Happy Holiday. Thanks. God bless.